Zixtalan adjusted the sensitivity on the observation suite, her scaled fingers dancing across the holographic interface with practiced precision. The ship's scanning array penetrated Earth's atmosphere, revealing bewildering patterns of human activity across the planet's surface. "Their transportation systems are completely inefficient," remarked junior analyst Vexmore, his tail twitching with amusement. "Look at these gridlocked ground vehicles when they could simply use basic gravitational manipulation. Focus on the patterns, not the technology," Zixtalan corrected, her experience evident in her measured tone. "They're building structures that account for thousands of years of future erosion. They're cultivating biological diversity rather than optimizing for efficiency. These aren't the actions of a short-sighted species." The Cosmic Seeker's observation chamber fell silent as a new data stream appeared on the main view screen. Earth's communications network pulsed with information. Billions of simultaneous conversations, entertainment broadcasts, scientific exchanges, and commercial transactions. "They argue constantly," noted Communications Officer Pelzenith, her crystalline form refracting the light from the displays. "Even their leaders publicly disagree with one another. How do they accomplish anything without consensus?" Captain Vrendar entered the chamber, his imposing height forcing him to duck beneath the doorway. "The Council has reached a decision. We are to proceed with minimal contact protocols. A small delegation will make planetfall tomorrow at a remote location to minimize cultural contamination." Zixtalan felt a strange hesitation. "Captain, with respect, I believe standard protocols may be insufficient here. These humans show unusual behavioral patterns. Their technological development is wildly uneven, primitive in some areas, surprisingly advanced in others." "Your concerns are noted, Science Officer," Vrendar replied, his tone dismissive. "But the Confederation has successfully integrated 67 species over 12,000 cycles. The Council sees nothing exceptional in these humans." Later, that evening, alone in her quarters, Zixtalan reviewed the day's observations. She paused on footage of a human emergency response. A dwelling engulfed in flames, humans rushing toward rather than away from danger, forming spontaneous cooperation chains without apparent communication. One human emerged from the inferno, carrying two smaller humans, its outer dermal layer visibly damaged, yet it immediately returned toward the danger. "Computer, analyze behavior pattern," she instructed. "Behavior indicates voluntary self-risk for non-genetically related individuals. Inconsistent with optimal survival strategies," responded the emotionless, synthetic voice. Zixtalan felt a chill along her dorsal ridge. In 12,000 cycles of Confederation history, only predatory species willingly risked personal harm, and only for hunting or territorial defense. These humans were exhibiting altruistic self-endangerment. The implications were troubling. She composed a private message to the High Council's Xenobiological Ethics Committee. "Recommend caution regarding Earth integration. Humans display contradiction between technological development level and behavioral complexity. Potential classification: emergent, anomalous species." The response arrived almost immediately. "Recommendation noted but overruled. Proceed with standard contact protocols. Delegation departure unchanged." As the ship's cycle transitioned to rest period, Zixtalan found herself unable to enter torpor. Through the observation portal, the blue-green world rotated serenely below, its night side glittering with artificial light patterns. Something about these humans nagged at her instincts, a feeling completely unscientific yet impossible to dismiss. What the Confederation perceived as primitive might be something else entirely, something unprecedented, something potentially dangerous. The secure research facility beneath Mount Cheyenne hummed with activity as scientists and military personnel worked around the clock. Behind reinforced transparent barriers, Zixtalan and the 5 other Confederation representatives observed the humans with growing fascination. "They've separated us by physiological type," noted Ambassador Krell, his gelatinous form rippling with concern. "They're studying our biological differences systematically." Dr. Elena Sharova approached the communication barrier, activating the crude translation device her team had cobbled together from salvaged Confederation technology. The device shouldn't work. It lacked critical quantum calibration components. Yet, somehow the humans had made it functional. "We have questions about your propulsion systems," Dr. Sharova stated, her voice calm despite the extraordinary circumstances. "Our analysis suggests your ships manipulate spacetime in ways that violate our understanding of physics." Zix Talon exchanged glances with Technical Officer Mezdar. The humans had correctly identified principles of Confederation drive technology. After just 3 days of study, such comprehension should have taken years. "I am not authorized to share technical specifications," Mezdar replied stiffly. Colonel Jackson stepped forward, his weathered face revealing nothing. "We're not asking for specifications. We're confirming our own findings." He displayed a tablet showing a surprisingly accurate schematic of a basic fold drive. "Is this correct?" The Confederation representatives maintained diplomatic silence, but their subtle physiological reactions, which they didn't realize humans could detect, provided confirmation enough. Dr. Sharova smiled. "Thank you for the verification." Meanwhile, in orbit above Earth, the situation deteriorated rapidly. Admiral Voxthal of the Confederation's 7th Fleet watched in disbelief as primitive human spacecraft performed maneuvers that should have been impossible with their technology level. "They're using modified communication satellites as weapons," reported Tactical Officer Chinzeth. "Somehow they've adapted their rudimentary satellites to generate focused electromagnetic pulses that disrupt our shield harmonics." "Impossible," the Admiral growled. "Their technological level prohibits such adaptations." "Nevertheless," replied Chinzeth, "cruisers' inevitable justice and stellar dominance have lost primary shield functionality." In the command center of the International Space Defense Coalition, General Diana Martinez received the update with grim satisfaction. "The modified satellites are working. Their shields can't compensate for the rapidly shifting EM frequencies. It won't hold them for long," cautioned Chief Scientist Dr. Hikaru Tanaka. "They'll adapt their shields." "We don't need long," Martinez replied. "Just long enough to deploy the next phase." She turned to her communications officer. "Status on the quantum intrusion team?" "Team Foxhound has successfully penetrated the alien network infrastructure using the access codes we extracted from their landing vessel. They're implementing the data retrieval protocols now." Across the globe, human resistance formed with astonishing speed and coordination. Nations that had been enemies days before now shared intelligence and resources. Civilian volunteers worked, alongside military personnel, converting ordinary technologies into defense systems. Back in the research facility, Zix Talon observed this flurry of adaptive innovation with growing unease. The Confederation had conquered worlds with far superior technology through overwhelming force, yet these humans weren't following any established pattern of species under duress. Instead of panicking or surrendering when faced with vastly superior technology, they were innovating, collaborating, almost as if the challenge itself energized them. "We've made a terrible miscalculation," Zix Talon whispered to Ambassador Krell. "These humans don't fear superior force. They see it as a puzzle to be solved." Outside the containment area, Dr. Sharova smiled as her team successfully bypassed the encryption on a Confederation data core. The first step toward equalizing the technological playing field had begun. Dr. Sophia Chen wiped sweat from her brow as she recalibrated the reverse-engineered medical scanner for the 12th time. For 3 days straight, she had been working to unlock its secrets, catching only brief moments of sleep on the cot in the corner of her lab. "Your persistence is unusual," observed Zix Talon, who had been transferred to the Medical Research Division after providing valuable insights. "Most species would have accepted failure after the 3rd attempt." Dr. Chen laughed, the sound startling the alien observer. "Failure is just data. Each time something doesn't work, we learn another approach to eliminate." She gulped down her 5th cup of coffee, the bitter stimulant allowing her to push beyond normal human endurance limits. "Your physiology should be showing significant stress responses by now," Zixtalan noted, genuinely curious. Yet your cognitive functions appear unimpaired. Coffee and stubbornness, Dr. Chen replied with a wry smile. Humanity's secret weapons. In orbit, the situation evolved in ways that defied Confederation tactical algorithms. Admiral Krav reviewed the damage reports with increasing agitation. 17 days into what should have been a simple display of overwhelming force, 3 key vessels were disabled, and human counterattacks grew increasingly sophisticated. They're learning our shield frequencies faster than we can recalibrate, reported his tactical officer. Each encounter teaches them more about our systems. How? Demanded Krav, his dorsal spines flaring with frustration. Their technology is primitive. Their processing capabilities are limited. Their resources are finita. Perhaps it's not their technology that's the variable we've underestimated, suggested Science Consul Neri, who had been analyzing the battle patterns. It's their cognitive approach. On the planet's surface, in a makeshift laboratory buried within the Rocky Mountains, Professor James Watkins led an international team in reprogramming salvaged components from a downed Confederation shuttle. The standard encryption should have taken centuries to break with Earth's computing power. Yet Watkins had approached the problem differently, not as a computational challenge but as a linguistic one. Their mathematics reveals their thinking. Patterns, he explained to the assembled military observers. Their number system isn't just a tool. It's a reflection of how they conceptualize reality. Major Jiang looked skeptical. You're saying you broke their encryption by understanding their philosophy? Exactly, Watkins confirmed, his eyes bright with excitement despite his exhaustion. Their species evolved with different perceptual frameworks. Their technology reflects those frameworks. Once we understood how they think, their security systems became transparent. Across the planet, similar breakthroughs occurred as humans applied diverse thinking approaches to alien technology. Indigenous Australian scientists recognized patterns in Confederation navigation systems that paralleled their ancient star knowledge. A team of musicians in Vienna decoded the alien communication network by treating signal patterns as musical compositions rather than data packets. In the secure briefing room of the Confederation command ship, Admiral Krav received the increasingly alarming reports. They're adapting too quickly. Our models predicted they would need decades to understand our basic systems, yet they're making conceptual leaps in days. Science Consul Neri's expression was grave. We may need to reevaluate our fundamental assumptions about human cognition. They're not following any established technological development curve. They're what? Krav demanded. They're treating our technology like a puzzle they're excited to solve, not a superior force to be feared, Neri replied quietly. And that changes everything about this confrontation. Field Commander Ultrock scanned the mountain valley where his elite unit had cornered a small band of human resistance fighters. After 3 days of relentless pursuit through treacherous terrain, his soldiers showed signs of fatigue, their movements slowing, reaction times diminishing. The humans, remarkably, did not. Status report, he demanded through his neural link. Targets remain entrenched in defensive position. His second-in-command responded. They have minimal supplies, no reinforcements, and have sustained injuries. Yet they continue to resist with undiminished effectiveness. Ultrox growled in frustration. According to all combat models, the humans should have surrendered or collapsed from exhaustion hours ago. Instead, they had constructed ingenious defensive positions from natural materials and continued to repel his technologically superior forces. They should be breaking, he muttered. Why aren't they breaking? Back at the International Research Facility, Zixtalan observed with fascination as the human endurance experiment entered its 4th hour. Elite soldiers from various Earth nations competed against Confederation species representatives in standardized physical challenges. The rhinoceros-like Brock warrior had easily outperformed humans in pure strength tests, lifting 4 times the maximum human capacity. The feline Nimari scout had demonstrated speed and agility far beyond human capability. Yet as the endurance trial continued, both alien participants showed obvious signs of physiological stress, while the humans appeared to grow stronger. This defies biological logic, Zixtalon commented to Dr. Aisha Okafor, the lead xenophysiologist. Their performance metrics are improving despite accumulated fatigue. Dr. Okafor nodded, monitoring the biometric displays. It's called the second wind phenomenon. Human bodies actually release additional energy reserves when pushed to apparent limits. Our ancestors evolved this trait as persistence hunters. She pointed to the neural activity scans of the human participants. See that? Their brains are releasing endorphins, essentially rewarding them for continuing despite discomfort. The more it hurts, the more their bodies encourage them to continue. A species that evolved to push beyond their limits, Zixtalon whispered. That treats exhaustion as a challenge rather than a warning. The implications were disturbing. Confederation. Military doctrine relied on the universal principle that all intelligent species responded to prolonged pressure by conserving energy and eventually disengaging. Humans violated this fundamental assumption. At the War Council meeting, High General Zorax received reports from multiple fronts with growing concern. The human resistance in Sector 7 should have collapsed weeks ago, reported Intelligence Officer Vex. They've been cut off from supplies, subjected to constant pressure, and offered generous surrender terms, yet they continue fighting with increasing effectiveness. The prisoners we've captured explain it as getting their second wind, or hitting their stride, added cultural interpreter Minnie. They describe the phenomenon as pleasurable, as if struggle itself provides energy rather than depleting it. Worse still, continued Vex, they've begun adapting their tactics based on observed Confederation vulnerabilities, our rotation schedules, our rest requirements. They've identified precisely when our forces are at minimum effectiveness and concentrate their attacks at those moments. Zorax's expression darkened. They're learning our limitations and exploiting them, while seemingly unbound by limitations themselves, Min added quietly. A chilling realization spread through the council chamber. They faced a species that grew more dangerous the longer conflict continued. A species that, rather than being worn down by hardship, was literally designed to thrive on it. We need to reassess our entire strategic approach, Zorax declared, an unprecedented admission from Confederation leadership. These humans don't follow any known patterns of response to pressure. Confederation biological researcher Trinsec adjusted the neural interface connecting him to the quantum observation unit. The holographic display rendered human cellular activity at the nanoscopic level, capturing processes too subtle for conventional analysis. Record findings, sequence 17, he instructed the laboratory system. Human bone tissue samples exhibit unprecedented microstructural remodeling following stress application. Unlike all documented sentient species, their skeletal reinforcement occurs continuously throughout their lifespan. The comparative display showed the dramatic difference between human bone healing and that of the 12 Confederation species. While other species repaired damage to original specifications, human bones actually rebuilt themselves stronger at fracture points. Their entire biology seems designed around the principle of adaptive response to damage, Trinsec noted with growing fascination. Even their cognitive architecture demonstrates similar properties. In the adjacent laboratory, neural specialist Jen Va monitored the brain activity of volunteer human subjects undergoing complex problem-solving tasks. After 3 weeks of daily challenges, their neural efficiency had improved by 42%, a rate of adaptation that violated established neurological principles. They learned differently than any documented species, Genva reported during the Emergency Council briefing. Most intelligent beings master patterns through repetition. Humans actively seek pattern disruption. When faced with the same problem, presented differently, other species experience performance decline. Humans show performance improvement. High Counselor Fendra leaned forward, her crystalline form refracting light across the briefing room. Clarify the tactical implications. Trinsec activated a new holographic display showing a human military unit before and after sustained combat operations. Traditional doctrine assumes combat effectiveness degrades with continued exposure. Human combat effectiveness increases. They call it becoming battle-hardened. On Earth, in the recovering ward of a military hospital, Lieutenant Sarah Kamathi demonstrated this phenomenon as she pushed through her rehabilitation exercises. 3 months earlier, a Confederation energy weapon had shattered her femur and severely damaged surrounding tissue. According to all medical precedent, she should never walk unassisted again. "Looking strong today, Lieutenant," observed physical therapist Dr. Marcus Chen, monitoring her vitals as she completed her 15th lap around the recovery track. "Feeling stronger every day, Doc," she replied, barely winded. "When can I rejoin my unit?" Dr. Chen smiled at her determination. "Most humans would still be in bed after your injuries." "I'm not most humans," she replied with a grin. "And neither are they." She nodded toward the dozens of other recovering soldiers, all pushing their recoveries at rates that astonished the Confederation medical observers allowed to study the facility. Back in the Confederation Research Center, genetics specialist Vortex presented the most disturbing findings. Human genetic diversity exceeds all rational parameters for a unified species. They maintain variation levels typical of early evolutionary stages, yet function cohesively. "Meaning what?" demanded Strategic Director Pelnovar. "Meaning they continuously produce outlier individuals with unique adaptations," Vortex explained. "While our species stabilized genetically millennia ago, humans are still actively evolving. Each generation introduces potential adaptations that might counter our technological advantages." The briefing room fell silent as the implications became clear. The Confederation had never encountered a species designed by evolution to continuously adapt, not over millennia but within individual lifespans and between generations. "We are facing an unprecedented biological paradigm," concluded Trinsec. "A species that strengthens under pressure, constantly evolves, and biologically rewards risk-taking and innovation. From a strategic perspective, every conventional approach we employ against them may actually accelerate their development of countermeasures." Commander James Wu studied the holographic representation of the damaged Confederation habitat with his diverse team. The oxygen generation system had been critically damaged during the last skirmish, endangering both human and alien occupants. Western engineering would approach this as a mechanical problem, he explained to Zix Talon, who observed with fascination. "But watch what happens when we introduce different cultural frameworks." Dr. Amara Osei, an environmental engineer from Ghana, stepped forward. "In my tradition, we wouldn't see this as just a mechanical failure. This is an ecosystem imbalance. The habitat breathes like a living entity." Her solution involved redirecting existing biological systems to temporarily increase oxygen production. Next, Dr. Rajiv Patel presented an approach based on ancient Indian principles of resource conservation. Rather than generating more oxygen, we can redesign living spaces to reduce consumption by 30% through spatial reorganization principles developed in Vastu Shastra. Two entirely different approaches to the same problem, Wu noted. Both potentially viable. Zixtalon's 4 eyes blinked in rapid succession, her species' expression of profound surprise. "You aren't debating which approach is correct?" "Why would we?" Wu replied. "We'll implement elements of both, plus the 3 other approaches our team developed. Multiple solutions work better than a single, perfect solution." The concept bewildered Zixtalon. Confederation species operated by consensus, finding the optimal approach through logical elimination of alternatives. Humans seem to thrive on maintaining multiple contradictory approaches simultaneously. In orbit, the Confederation fleet encountered this same phenomenon in military form. Tactical Officer Thrick studied the human counteroffensive with growing alarm. "They're using completely different battle doctrines in each sector," he reported to Fleet Commander Vorax. "European forces employ formation-based tactics. American units use technological asymmetry. Asian forces utilize environmental manipulation. African units implement rapid mobility strategies." "How do they coordinate such disparate approaches?" Vorax demanded. "They don't, by our standards," Thrix admitted. "They allow each force to operate according to their own cultural military traditions. When one approach fails, they don't refine it. They switched to an entirely different cultural framework. The strategic implications were staggering. Confederation tactical computers could predict refinements of existing strategies, but couldn't anticipate complete paradigm shifts occurring mid-battle. Back at the International Coordination Center, Dr. Eleanor M. Becky presented her findings to the assembled Earth Defense Council. Representatives from 47 nations listened as she explained the aliens' vulnerability. The Confederation's primary advantage has always been predictive modeling, she explained. Their 1,000-year peace resulted from cultural homogenization. Each species follows optimized logical thought patterns. And we don't, observed General Takashi with a smile. Precisely, Mbeki continued. Our chaotic cultural diversity appears primitive to them, but creates cognitive flexibility they can't match. They literally cannot predict which approach will try next because we maintain thousands of different valid problem-solving frameworks simultaneously. In the science division, Professor Joe demonstrated this advantage by assembling development teams deliberately mixing cultural backgrounds. When tasked with reverse engineering Confederation technology, culturally homogeneous teams made steady, predictable progress. Culturally diverse teams produced wildly uneven results. Numerous failures punctuated by revolutionary breakthroughs that leapfrogged multiple technological generations. Human progress isn't linear, Joe explained to the astonished Confederation observers. We take 3 steps back and then 7 steps forward. We call it creative destruction, the willingness to abandon established approaches entirely. Zixtalan, recording these observations for the increasingly concerned council, finally understood what made humans so adaptable. Their seeming irrationality, maintaining contradictory beliefs, celebrating heterogeneous approaches, refusing to optimize their cultures, wasn't a weakness, but a form of cognitive diversity insurance that allowed them to navigate any challenge from multiple angles simultaneously. Captain Lara Hernandez stood perfectly still on the command deck of the inevitable Dominance, surrounded by stunned alien officers. The silence that followed her unexpected peace proposal stretched uncomfortably. Supreme Commander Voxthal recovered. First, his dorsal plates shifting from alarm crimson to cautious amber. You infiltrated our flagship, a feat our security protocols deemed impossible, to propose peace rather than exploit tactical advantage? Violence is easy, Hernandez replied simply. Building something lasting is harder. We prefer the harder path. The Confederation officers exchanged baffled glances. Their tactical doctrine had no protocol for responding to an adversary who gained advantage only to voluntarily relinquish it. Meanwhile, in the Emergency Council chamber, strategic analysts struggled to interpret this bewildering human behavior. It must be deception, insisted High General Zorax, pounding his armored fist against the tactical display. No species achieves military advantage only to surrender it. Zixtalan, now recognized as the foremost human behavior expert, shook her head. Their history suggests otherwise. Humans repeatedly demonstrate capacity for self-restraint even from positions of dominance. She activated a historical projection showing Earth's nuclear development timeline. Their species developed planet-destroying weapons, yet exercised extraordinary restraint in their use. They established complex ethical frameworks limiting application of power, not from weakness, but from philosophical choice. Ethicist Junsho leaned forward. You suggest they genuinely believe cooperation provides superior outcomes to domination, even when domination is achievable? Evidence indicates this belief represents a core human paradox, Zixtalan confirmed. They fight with unmatched ferocity when threatened, yet frequently choose mercy from positions of strength. The implication sent ripples of discomfort through the council. Their strategic doctrine, like that of every known intelligent species, was founded on the principle that power, once obtained, would naturally be exercised to maximum advantage. A species that voluntarily limited its power application when unnecessary suffering would result violated fundamental assumptions about intelligent behavior. Back on the Confederation command carrier, Captain Hernandez elaborated on the human peace proposal. We've demonstrated our capacity to penetrate your defenses. You've demonstrated your technological superiority. Continued conflict benefits neither species. Yet you place yourself at our mercy by surrendering, noted Supreme. Commander Voxthal, still struggling to understand the logic. Hernandez smiled slightly. We demonstrate trust to build trust. Someone must take the first step. Aboard Earth's Defense Coordination Station, General Miyagi received the encrypted transmission from Hernandez's subcutaneous transmitter. The peace proposal has been delivered. Waiting for response. And if they decide to imprison the team instead? Asked his aide. Then we learn something valuable about their character, Miyagi replied calmly, and implement contingency protocols. The contingency remained unspoken. That sleeper code had already been implanted in Confederation systems during the infiltration. Not to destroy, but to monitor. Humans prepared for peace while remaining ready for alternatives. Another paradox. The Confederation struggled to reconcile. In the council chamber, strategist Kolvex presented the final disturbing analysis. Our models confirm the trend. Conflict doesn't weaken humans, it strengthens them. They adapt to our technology, incorporate our methods, and emerge more formidable. Yet when advantaged, they consistently prefer mutually beneficial outcomes to exploitation. Elder Counselor Xantor, silent until now, finally spoke. In 12,000 cycles, we have never encountered a species simultaneously so dangerous yet so restrained. Their capacity for adaptation makes them unstoppable in conflict, yet their philosophical framework prevents them from exploiting that advantage unprovoked. A predator species with a conscience, ethicist Junsho whispered. No, corrected Zixtalan. Something we've never classified before. Something entirely new. Ambassador Zixtalan stood at the observation deck of the Convergence Station, watching Earth rotate serenely below. 1 year since the peace accord, and the changes throughout, Galactic society had exceeded even her most optimistic projections. Still struggling to believe it? Asked Dr. Elena Markov, who had joined the diplomatic corps after her groundbreaking work during the conflict. Not struggling, Zixtalan replied thoughtfully. Adjusting. My species requires time to process. Paradigm shifts. Below them in the station's central plaza, representatives from all 13 species mingled freely. Most striking were the informal educational exchanges occurring spontaneously throughout the space. Confederation specialists eagerly learning from humans, despite technically possessing far more advanced knowledge. Your medical techniques particularly fascinate us, Zixtalan noted. Despite our superior technology, human physicians achieve results we cannot replicate. Because we evolved treating injuries with limited resources, Dr. Markov explained. When you can't rely on technology, you develop different approaches. Across the station in the engineering sector, a similar pattern emerged. Confederation. Engineers with thousands of years of accumulated knowledge listened attentively as human technicians demonstrated improvised solutions that violated conventional principles, yet achieved superior results. They approach problems like explorers, not engineers, observed Chief Designer Voxnar to his colleague. They try approaches we would dismiss as illogical, and occasionally discover entirely new principles. The most profound transformations occurred in the philosophical realm. The ancient Elshir, wisest of Confederation species, had formally adopted human philosophical frameworks after intensive study. For 10 millennia, we pursued optimization and consensus, explained Grand Philosopher Eshtali during her historic address. We eliminated chaos, standardized approaches, and achieved remarkable stability. Yet in doing so, we inadvertently eliminated the very diversity that drives transcendent innovation. The Elshir delegation had spent months studying human philosophical traditions from Taoism to existentialism, from indigenous wisdom traditions to cutting-edge cognitive science. What they discovered transformed their understanding of intelligence itself. Humans maintain contradictory beliefs simultaneously, Eshtali continued. They embrace uncertainty rather than resolving it. They preserve cultural diversity despite its inefficiencies. These traits, which we misinterpreted as primitive, actually represent a more advanced relationship with complexity than our pursuit of singular optimization. In the station's diplomatic wing, the newly formed Interspecies Innovation Council reviewed proposals for joint ventures. Most revolutionary was the human suggestion to establish mixed-species colonies rather than segregated ones, deliberately creating environments where different biological and cognitive frameworks would interact daily. Won't this create inefficiencies? Asked Councillor Zin Val, genuinely curious. Absolutely, confirmed Council Chair Dr. Samuel Okafor with a smile. Creative friction produces breakthrough innovation. Efficiency often just optimizes existing approaches. Perhaps most telling was the education exchange program. Initially, the Confederation had expected to teach humans, elevating them toward galactic standards. Instead, Confederation academies now sent their brightest minds to Earth universities to study human approaches to innovation, creativity, and adaptability. Ambassador Zixtalan finished recording her daily observations for the Confederation archives. The most significant revelation, she noted, may be that humans have transformed our understanding of advancement itself. We defined progress as perfecting established patterns. Humans define it as transcending them entirely. They remain unstoppable, not through domination but through continuous reinvention, a capacity they have now awakened throughout galactic society. As she completed her log, a notification appeared. The human-led expedition had successfully penetrated the Cygnus barrier, opening an entirely new quadrant for exploration. The impossible, once again, had simply been another puzzle for humans to solve.